Hi folks, it's time for another pack review. Apologies for basically taking a little break from these. We were supposed to do Fire Upon the Grass a while back, but busy times for both Steven and me, so we're going to catch up now. Steven is here with me once again. Hello.
Hello, lovely to be here as always.
Yeah, so basically we're recording this in July now, so we have the next pack already out, but we still owe you this review for Fire Upon the Grass, so we'll do that here. And we also, as you may have noticed, so we stopped doing the little look backs for the last two packs. Because simply now that cards come out so frequently, we need to give them a little bit of time so that we can properly evaluate how they are doing. And now some time has passed since the first pack has come out, and we'll have a look at that as well. So I guess we can move on to that, and then I'll show you this release article in more detail. So as you know, we have this cycle now, 120 cards, Mists of Memory, and the True Telling was the first pack to come out, I think at the end of January, was it, Steven?
Something like that, yeah.
And it was 20 cards that have been out for a good few months now, and we can look back at these. So this was the first pack. I listened to the review we did just now, to a few comments, and I was saying in that one that I thought most of the cards, almost everything. I think I pointed out Lonely Hills is the only one that wasn't going to be just immediately played. Almost everything was a very playable card, and I think now looking at just the card titles here, it has actually been a successful pack. So you see these all in action pretty much, right, Steven?
Yeah, definitely. There's some that I saw a surprisingly large amount, like Victorian Greyjoy. I've seen everywhere. He seems to be a very, very hot pick for a Prince deck in Drowned God, which makes sense. You know, just ignoring the whole R'hllor part of that. He does very well. I've seen a surprisingly large amount of Blood Raven. I mean, it's a unique ability, fair enough. I've even seen a Sentinel stand here and there. So I definitely agree. This felt like a pretty successful pack. There's only a small handful of cards here I can say that I haven't seen, and that's from my perspective. Who I don't really play as often as I'd like to lately. So it's pretty good.
Yeah, this was the last pack to come out before the World Cup was played. I think World Cup started in. Oh, actually, I might be guessing here, so let's not. But I think this was the last legal one, and we saw some cards included, some cards making it to those World Cups decks, and the Lannister actually seems to have benefited the most from this card. So we talked about problematic
Yeah.
cards the last time, and we mentioned Myrcella and Castamere as possibly a little much. And Myrcella, throughout the design process, she was for a long time had a one icon because the other Myrcella is just such a good card that it was difficult to imagine that this one would replace her. But yeah, just Lanny being able to do additional intrigue challenges in combination with the other card Castamere and threatening win by 5 on several, basically having several attempts at doing that. They
Yeah.
have been a bit much, and it's elevated Lannister to basically being the top faction for the last few months with the World Cup and the online worlds. I guess before the online worlds there was a restricted list that curbed it a little bit, but yeah, still pretty strong.
Yeah, yeah, no, I unfortunately wasn't able to keep up as much with the World Cup, so it was mostly word of mouth. All I heard people saying was "Castamere this, Castamere that." So I got to agree with you there, at least from word of mouth.
Yeah, basically what's been happening is clansman decks clear the board really efficiently, right? So you get
Yeah.
Casimir was used a couple of different ways. So sometimes there's some decks going around with core Cersei that raises the claim during intrigue challenges. Then you trigger this for claim 2, or sometimes it's more. And Tyrion raising the claim, right? On the
Yeah.
military or on the intrigue, and then you get intrigue military. Sometimes even combining with trial by combat, which is an older card that kills as well, and you can
Mm.
get everything basically. So that has happened
Mm.
quite a lot,
I-
but clansmen have been hit a little bit with restricted list, but still doing pretty well. One made
yeah.
top 8, I think, at Worlds recently.
I don't know if it's stuck around, but I did see Sir Kevin Lannister being used early of this pack's release to get Castamere back onto the board. I don't know if that was still happening to this day, but I thought that was an interesting interaction that we noticed was there, but didn't really think many people would touch it. Um, Considering paying 6 gold for a 1 gold card, but it's just worth it in some decks.
Yeah, I've seen also King's Landing just to bring it back every round.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the best cards from this pack. You mentioned Victarion. Yeah, Drowned God stuff. I mean, there's two Drowned God cards in this one, so it was not a surprise at all that Drowned God was played with a lot. So Victarion can go in non-Drowned God as well, and has done on occasion, but really in Drowned God is a pretty safe body to store power on, because he essentially cannot be killed. He can, but let's say it's difficult to remove.
Yeah.
And recently I've seen the weapon Driftwood Cudgel being played on him just to get some ridiculous strength, and since he can't be removed, then he just dominates. And I thought going into online worlds there would be a lot of Drowned God. I played with it myself, even some interactions seemed pretty crazy, but in the end just missing a little bit, couldn't get it to win as much as I would like. But yeah, it's getting there for sure.
Yeah. I've seen quite a few. I know there's someone in our meta that really loves to play this card as well. And he's just been playing it over and over, and I've been seeing other people playing a very, very similar deck in the few times I get to play. So, I mean, and as you said, it makes sense. It's a safe body. In Drowned God, it's a renowned body that cannot be killed in the times that you need it. Like I've seen it, the expected play of doing it in the plot phase and then using Valor M, even though it's quite easy to see coming because you're kneeling him at the start of the phase, it's just hard to counter. So it's a pretty good safe body with a 5/5 as a 5/5 Bicon with the icons that you kind of want in that deck. All the stars align really well. Not to say it's not bust. I don't think it's busted or anything. I enjoy seeing it. I'm surprised that it's being used as much as it is.
Yeah, and the Drowned God plot honestly has been great. I've enjoyed that. Basically, so the income value here is a little bit low to just go crazy with it, but I've had some games where I lost the board, and this has served basically as a way to repopulate from the dead pile, and it's been pretty good, especially if you play around with your choice of Tarle that tries Drowned, which you can now. We have one coming up, I think, in this review, so that's
Yep.
been fun for me.
Hmm.
What else did you say? We mentioned Open Revolt as possibly dangerous. I haven't seen people consistently getting 4 power from it, but people have been getting 2 power basically in a Winter Festival kind of way, switching into this from Reigns when they were already doing well, and just putting the pressure on with the rush. I've seen that happen, so it's been okay, but so far not going crazy. And yeah, we did remove the trident interaction basically from that, so it's just basically Reigns now, or you can play it anywhere, I guess, but it's not that great outside of Reigns.
Yeah.
What else? Karstark Lancer, I mentioned that I was worried about passive power. Okay, it hasn't. I was overreacting as usual, so that hasn't been impactful at all.
Yeah.
Sentinel Stand, you mentioned. We've seen House with the Red Door with that occasionally, but
Yep.
also not going crazy.
Yeah. I think all in all, this pack, it feels like when the strongest cards we can talk about are Marcella and Castamere, which are strong, but I don't think they're absolutely breaking the game. It feels like a pretty decent pack. Even like Bed of Scorpions, I'll admit, I was scared that was going to be too easy. Barely see that played as much as I'd like it to. But like the reaction itself is still pretty easy in my mind. So I'm glad like cards like that was an overreaction from me or other ones from you, because everything seems good and everything seems fun, which is what we like to see in the Desante.
Yeah, just looking at this entire pack. So basically, everything is played at least to some extent, except for, I guess, Lonely Hills, which still needs more support from House Amber. And okay, High Garden Treasure, I've seen that played. I mean, there was a deck going around that removes stuff from challenges, so that's being played. Free Brothers is being played, just randomly putting those freedmen in the discard pile. There was some opinions about Red Apple Knight not being quite strong enough, but I mean, that's, I think for me, is playable as well. I thought at the Tower of Joy would be a really impactful card potentially. In testing, when it had 4 income, 4 gold, basically it was pretty good. You couldn't get rid of key characters, so there's some decks that just go strong from the beginning, and then if you can't remove the characters or the character that is the most impactful gets the most power or is causing the most problems, then they just win. I thought with Fat Cat maybe rushing Tower of Joy would be great, but it's been played less than I would have imagined, so possibly we could say we got it right, or I think it was too good at 4 gold, so I don't think it was over nerfed in the end. And
it might be slightly under the mark, but it's, in my mind, that's better than being an overpowered card, really.
yeah,
You can always
especially with that
you can always
ability.
support. Yeah, you can always support things. You can't. It's harder to restrict and add more and more complicated restrictions to cards if they're too powerful.
Yeah, and let's end this section with the 2 cards you mentioned as our favorites. So for me,
Yes.
Baratheon, I talked about the Kunchos between Beric and Lady Maria. So Beric obviously being stronger, and well, he is incredibly strong. So if you can trigger his ability, it's a little bit, it's not super versatile because you can't do it on defense, and that means going second also becomes a disadvantage if you want to do Beric, and doesn't fit in control that nicely. But he fitted perfectly in Kohor, and now Kohor has been hit with a really devastating restriction, which has kind of killed it in my opinion as a competitive deck. So let's stop Beric just sliding into that deck perfectly. You have to think of other options with him now. So yeah, we can still explore that a little bit. So it's not like he's solved and there's no more ideas to be found with him. But the one I mentioned as my favorite was Lady Maria. And I thought with even before it came out, smugglers were almost there. Some players had pretty strong decks with Corraine controlling stuff, and then the new army, well, new at the time, the Saldor Sans Lyseni, which can actually gain power for the first time. Smugglers can get a bit of power, get a win condition. I thought Lady Maria was excellent in testing. I played it, won the playtesting event, and I was looking forward to that. Then first event, as soon as it came out, was an online event with almost 30 players I think we had, and I just lost basically all the games, so haven't touched it since. But I know there was a smugglers deck at Stalek made, I think went 5-3, so not sure what the deck was like and how many copies of Lady Maria, but smugglers again, like Drowned God, on the verge of being able to win something in the near future, and we do have something more for them coming up in this review as well. So that was mine, and yours was Skimming Snake. So the boring, non-unique. But did you
Very,
did you make anything with
very,
it?
not really, but it's that's not a lack of the card. It's more just a lack of my imagination, really. I have her in a Skimming Snake in like a lot of my shadow decks, just because it's very obvious with Ariane. I thought I'd be able to have build more of a Scheming Snake deck. Sorry, a Sand Snake deck. Apologies, but it just didn't feel that worth it. Especially mixing a lot of the Sand Snake tech. You want to have Harmonola in there, for example. Apart from Nymeria, like 5-cost Nymeria Sand, there's not a lot of icon removal that's naturally baked into Sand Snakes. So you sort of had to split the theme a bit to make that work. So it didn't work as well as I wanted to in Sand Snakes. It worked pretty well in Shadow decks. And I do have it as a few copies in my Bastard Viper deck. And it worked quite well there. But all in all, I probably played them a little bit less than I wanted to. And I think it's mostly because they haven't slotted into Sand Snakes as well as I'd liked. The second, if there's ever a card in the future that, similar to Nymeria Sand, is a Sand Snake card that also works with icon removal, it'll make Scheming Snake a bit more playable in that theme, I think.
Yeah, there was one deck at the World Cup, Martell Free Companies, which had some icon removal and removing characters from challenges, returning them to hand. It was really strong in the late game. Put a bunch of stuff in shadows in the early game. I don't remember how many copies of Scheming Snake. I guess we can even see. I mean, we have TronsDB open. Yeah, so this one. It does have 2 copies of Scheming Snake, yeah, so we played against it with the Trakis, with Targaryen couldn't be beaten, so it did do well in the World Cup, this one. So
yeah, and this one here is a very I can already say it's a very shadowy deck, which makes sense, but it does also, so it's mixing Sand Snakes and Shadow, which I like to see. Yeah, nice. Like this, and that makes the most sense. Especially any deck that you can have Shadow Ariane in, it makes sense to put in Scheming Snake, regardless of what the other themes are. So it doesn't surprise me that this went well.
okay, I think that's enough of true telling for now. We can
enough of the past. Let's get to the present, or let's get to 2 months ago.
Yeah. Fire upon the grass next. So as promised, here is the release article. This website has been causing problems for me lately, actually being able to navigate it and search for these articles on the website itself. So I've relied on the Discord links, Discord announcements a little bit. Hopefully you have more luck with finding stuff. If not, of course, I will post the links in the description of this video for anyone that's actually has not got Fire Upon the Grass yet. I know we're a bit late, but there you are. So it's as usual, there's a bit of flavor text, a bit of description of the stuff, and you can see some of the cards highlighted here. These are well written. If you want to read them, I recommend it. But we are going to go to TronsDB and go card by card as usual. So 20 again, 2 for each faction, and then 4 neutrals, and we'll I guess have the random order again, Steven.
Yes, I've got that up and ready to go. Let's spin the wheel of house names. We're starting off with so close to Martell. No, it's Lannister. Literally on the line. Starting off with Lannister. Let's get into it.
Okay, so Lannister doing really well lately, and let's see if they are continuing with strong cards here. So they have Warrior Sons as their character in this one. This is a rare non-unique card that has a second copy. Might be the first. Is it the first? I think so.
I think it is the first, but there might be a few others coming up, maybe.
Right.
But I'm pretty sure it's the first though. Yeah.
I think even for non-characters we haven't had this. Yeah, I think it's the first. So basically,
We've got this, and we have Kingswood. Kingswood.
right? Yeah, Kingswood coming up, the
Yeah.
Lanny version.
Also Lannister.
Not in this pack though. In the next one.
No. That's the other one I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Okay, so as usual, just before we start, so rules FAQ entries you can find on the individual card pages on ThronesDB. If something is weird or unclear or sounds wrong, you can let me know. We'll double check for you. So this one basically strong, non-unique, costly as well, but strong and has an inbuilt stand, which you can do if you move power onto it. Of course, the obvious way, right, is the Fate Militant Agenda, which has that mechanic inbuilt. So I guess that was the thinking, right, the idea behind this card.
Yeah, and in playtesting, I didn't actually see that happening as much. I did, however, see Warrior Sons being played really well with, and obviously with full cost Sir Lancel, and just keeping those two cards in mind provides a lot more value for this Warrior Sons. Kneeling a full cost card to put in a 6-cost card from your hand or discard pile, pretty good, regardless of the stand that it can do. So yeah, that's the main thing that we've been seeing with this card, and I'm not sure if people have picked up on using that combo yet as much.
Yeah, and also the army trait, of course, in Lannister is relevant. So you have the event Burning Bright, which I think.
Yeah.
Let me just double check so that I'm not talking nonsense. Yeah, it can put that into play, and then it's putting basically a 6-coster into play for 2. You don't want something small coming into play. You want something big, and yeah. That could be decent.
Yep.
And yeah, just to comment on what basically is described down here, there is a neutral version of Warrior Sons, which actually is has a mechanic that moves power onto it also. But these are all self-referential, so every Warrior Sons, whether this or the neutral ones, if you have multiple copies in play, they can all only stand themselves or move power onto themselves. And you're still, of course, you can't play 6 now. 3 of these and 3 neutrals. You're still limited by title. 3 copies maximum in your deck. And the other card, the Sack of King's Landing. So as you've noticed, everyone getting their infection plot in this one, and well, in my opinion, the Lannister plot is a bit all over the place. So it looks like pillage support, but really you shouldn't fall into that trap. So it gives everyone pillage during intrigue challenges, every Lannister character. So if you're playing pillage anyway, that part is just wasted. You don't need to play pillage if you want to discard cards, and discarding cards, if you hit locations, can let you kill characters. So the printed cost has to align exactly, doesn't say equal or lower or anything like that, so you have to hit the same, but you can discard multiple cards at the same time. That's the thing, right? So any kind of political disaster when boards have gone wide, or any kind of, let's say, someone discarding their hand for you win or you die, and multiple locations are in there, there's no limit, so you can kill locations. Usually will not have a high cost, but let's say 3-cost and 2-cost locations getting discarded, that just clears the charge away potentially, and there's no limit on Sack of King's Landing plus the stats, right? So even if it does nothing, I mean, there's a high probability of winning initiative, and the goal is decent enough.
Yeah, definitely. This is the sort of card where we knew, similar to seven cost Gregor Clegane, it's a very roulette card where if you're not using any tools to make it work in your favor, it's a roll of the dice on whether you're actually going to land anything. Even as you said though, even if the text box of the card was blank, it is still a 5/7/1/6 plot, which is decent in any scenario. Uh, and what you said with the whole pillage, not being the main theme, I do agree with you there. However, this card does get some major benefit when you do play it alongside 5 cost pillage Tywin. And if you're putting that Tywin in your deck, it's very likely that you'd rather just make it a pillage deck. So this can easily be played in a non-pillage deck, that's for sure. But I do think it does get extra value in that pillage deck because you get to have a bit more control over that roulette wheel and actually maybe hit a valuable target. Not guaranteed, but it's still possible. It does also work alongside, I think it works alongside his host. Is that right?
If you pillage a location, then
Yeah.
what's it called? Tywin's host.
Yeah, so it can work alongside Lord Tywin's host as well, which I think is thematically quite relevant. And it's if you're discarding a location, you might get a second chance with another location in their hand. I think overall it's a pretty well-rounded plot. It's clearly begging to be used in pillage, but that's, as you said, I agree. It's not the only place it can be used. You can easily put it in a regular deck and you'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean the reaction. Okay, pillage is one way, but there's other ways. I mean, there's you don't even need luck specifically. If you play Ghost of High Heart, you look at the hand, you see the exact location threat, and if there's something that aligns with characters in play, they just get killed. Also, you can. I mean, even if a location, let's say you discard the location from play with lay waste or something, and that basically duped locations are not stopping you, because even if a dupe is discarded to save a location, it still enters the discard pile, gets you the kill just the same.
No, it's as I said, it's really it's a chance based card. It does have a bit of leeway where the actual player who's getting their location discarded gets to choose, which is, I guess, good in the scenario where you have a lot of chuds. If you have a single card, then you know what, tough luck, I guess. But yeah, it's very luck based, to be honest. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's not played competitively just for that reason alone. But if you can up the consistency of the card, you've got to make it a better card. That's sort of the point.
Yeah. And Lenny Trident. I mean, Trident has sometimes struggles with the econ plots. This is a ward with 5 gold. And great initiative as well. So,
and it does align with, again, Lord Tywin's host, which is going to be in that Trident deck as well, and probably Pillage Tywin at the same time. It does fit that deck quite well as well.
Okay, let's move on to the next one.
All right, spinning the wheel. We have. It's going to be Night's Watch.
Excellent. Okay, so we have Martius Conspirator is the first one. This one is interesting. I have seen played, not a lot, but some. It's a steward character that can come through shadows. Actually, only really worth putting it through shadows. So basically has a Mira kind of ability, right? Doesn't recycle or anything. I mean, Mira is crazy strong. So if you start comparing stuff with Mira, they're going to basically come out losing. But
yeah,
it's a steward, so customary intrigue icon. If you go with the high number of stewards for all the steward stuff, like Red Cook helps you there. Otherwise, it's just a character that if you have one more gold, then basically, if you don't, you can marshal it. If you have gold to spare, put it through shadows. I mean, blanking something can be super good. It's like a nightmares on a character, basically.
Yeah. This is honestly, and the fact that it's also non-loyal, it makes me. I know that this is going to just be an easy card for any sort of Kingdom of Shadow decks, for example, or any. If you're making a Banner Night's Watch deck that's Shadows for some reason, there you go. But it's just a very simple card, very straightforward, and for a Shadow cost of 2 and an overall cost of 4, it seems pretty easy slot, right? For a 3 cost, 3 strength monocon,
Yeah,
even if you just take it out, blank someone and kill them, it doesn't matter.
yeah, blanking has been okay throughout the game. I think Mord has seen play as a blank ability. Mira is played a lot. Nightmares is everywhere. Milk's still going strong. And yeah, Night's Watch also has basically an incredible shadow support card, Bowen, coming out in the next one, and he needs stuff with Printed Shadow because he basically is like the Shadow Sarian Martell, needs as many cards as possible to come out in the challenges phase, and yeah. This one is not bad, right? This one comes out, blanks something, and takes, well, let's say takes an icon, kind of similar mechanic to take an icon that Bowen has.
For Bowen, yeah. So it's going to be a very good card to match with him, which makes sense. It's his Conspirator. So that one will be out very soon. I mean, we all know it's out already, but yeah, it'll be good to see. It's a good support for that shadow theme. Even if you're just playing Night's Watch Shadow, it's a good card. Whether it's that or bannering it with something else, or Kingdom of Shadowing it with something else, Martial Conspirator, it's a very easy slot, I think.
Yeah, and I've played against the Bowen deck just the other day, but let's not talk about it too much. So we'll talk about Bowen next time on the next review.
Yes.
So, and the other one, in this one, Legacy of the Watch. So this is a very, let's say, pivotal card for Night's Watch. I mean, it's it has a lot of text, basically. So if you win by 5, you can get these abilities depending on the trait. So if you play a dedicated deck, you might get 1, and then it's a question whether this deck is this card goes in that deck, because if you're just getting the 1 reward, I mean, it's depends, right? Depends if you need it, and how easy it is to trigger, and how easy it is to get this in play. All the tapestry attachments basically are rather costly and need a good number of locations, so that you never run into a situation where it's stuck in your hand and no location to play it. But the other thing is, you could be looking for multiple of these conditions to be met at the same time in the same challenge, or in the same challenges phase, if you prefer, or whichever might be easier. I don't know. I'm not that kind of Night's Watch player, basically, that would be able to take advantage of this. But I've heard basically it was great in testing, but I have not seen it played much.
Yeah, this one, from the design perspective of this one, it was a very interesting journey for Legacy of the Watch. It started off, if I remember correctly, as a card similar to what their the Watch Needs Good Man, the plot that's for Night's Watch in Mist of Memory, had a very similar ability to that, and Watch Needs Good Man had a different idea very, very early on, but that actually got changed. And when we were picking the theme, everyone agreed that the theme, boosting the, having a ranger, steward, and builder theme it made the most sense for something that was called Legacy of the Watch. It's the 3 major roles of the Watch, and it's what makes them. It's what builds them up, really. So, but then you also run into the problem where you've seen it in the past with the Jon Snow that has the exact same theme, and just putting what's the 0 cost attachment? Sworn to the Watch on him. To have one character that has all 3 traits, and then that's it, you're done. Or a similar thing as to why one of the many reasons why Great Ranging is so good, because it's got 2 of those traits that you need. And so we ended up settling on this, having the if you control 2 or more participating part of this of this tapestry was the key factor there to make sure that you're actually having multiple of these characters on the board participating in that challenge at the same time. It does make it hard to work with because not only do you have to, as you said, have to work with the legacy restrictions of, sorry, the tapestry restrictions of unique Night's Watch location only, 3 cost, and just those two alone is actually a lot harder to line up than you really want. You also need to have those traits in. So you have to build your deck around this card. Once you do that, however, the rewards do seem a bit better because there's no limits to this. There's, gaining power for your faction, drawing 2 cards, or standing a Night's Watch location. All 3 of those are usually something you want to do. Even the builder one, you're going to be attaching this to a Night's Watch location.
Yeah,
that's it. For example,
that's the easy part, I think, on the builder one.
Exactly. So, and realistically, it does only require 2. You can play this if you're honing into even just one of those themes, but obviously it gains the most benefit with all 3. I do see this card being one that's not played as much right now, but I will not be surprised if that just calls for more boosting of the trait theme, I guess, of having rangers, stewards, and builders all on the board at the same time, rather than the other direction the Night's Watch goes in, where it focuses on one of those themes, which I think is also a great thematical thing. I think that there's a few cards here and there that just doesn't build up the having all 3 traits theme. I think this one will be the centerpiece behind that for a while to come.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if I'd play it in a deck that plays all rangers, all stewards, all builders, for instance. I think you do need to probably go for all 3 traits. And having played Night's Watch at the World Cup with Valyrian Steel, there was a mix of traits just to get the what's the location? I think Westwatch, the one that potentially stands the wall if you control all 3. All 3 different traits in play, and played 3 copies or 2 copies of fresh recruits in that one as well. So basically the plan is to get all 3 in play, and what you need here is to get multiple of all 3. I mean, it's tough, but if you can do it, or even just Sworn to the Watch still works, right? Potentially. I mean, if you have characters with icons. And then if you can trigger this for the multiple rewards, it's pretty nice. And no limit on this one as well, so we know how Lord Commander starts getting power if you're not careful, and if you attack into this, basically works on any challenge.
Yeah, I think one of the important things here as well is it's not based on the challenge type as well. So you can, for example, trigger the Ranger one multiple times, as long as you have those icons on the board. So, for example, winning a military challenge with 2 Rangers is very possible, gain a power. Winning a power challenge with 2 Rangers, especially with Sir Jeremy Riker, very possible. So that is one thing that does... this card has a lot of potential, but it also has a lot of hurdles. So if you can match those hurdles, then you're going to get a lot out of this tapestry. It's just very difficult to get to that at this point. Someone in the future might crack it, to be honest, but I don't think it's there just yet.
Okay, let's have the next faction.
Yes, spinning the wheel. Looking like Martell. Yes.
Okay, and you can start with a strong one here with Sir Aerys Oakheart.
Yes.
So I will open just to say that this has gone into the Tyrell white book that's everywhere and has just one online world, so it's another renown. The cost 5 is not the worst cost, because the Harris can mess with that deck if they get Barristan Selmy and Knight of Flowers, but 5/5 you can keep if you have this and Bryce Caron, or this and one of the Jamies, and so it's alright. And even just a guy with renown is good enough, but then he has an ability that actually is annoying if you start if you go first and mess with defenders. So all around extremely strong card. Now as a Martell card, forgetting about Tyrell Whitebook, much more reasonable. But I guess I'll let you comment on that.
Yeah, I think in a if you ignore White Book, I feel like this card is pretty good, pretty well balanced. It's the stats is what you're really playing it for, with the bonus of that passive, slightly touching on the challenge pool theme in a very Knights way, I guess, similar, sort of like the opposite of core Knight of Flowers, um, but also a little bit thematic based on Erisokart and Area Hota. Then you chuck it into an already really good White Book deck, and it looks a lot worse than it actually is. I think it's more because of that deck rather than the card itself. Card itself, I'd say, is a strong card. It becomes a bit too strong when it's matched with already good. So yeah, this is one that I don't think it was tested enough in a Kingsguard deck. It was sort of just seen as, yep, this will slot into a Kingsguard deck pretty easily. Um, whether it was one that should have had loyal or not, I'm not too sure. I don't think it's necessarily breaking the deck, but it's just another good card in an already good deck. So yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy with how it turned out, though. In the scope of the card itself, it's just a shame that it's now being known as, the next good addition to an already controversial deck. But yeah.
Yeah, so basically Tyrell Whitebook was strong for about a year and a half, and its predecessor, basically Tyrell Lion, for longer than that even. So it got restricted just before Online Worlds. Green Apple Knight was put on the restricted list, so couldn't play that in the deck anymore. But it still won. So I mean, even with that hit, it still won Online Worlds. And to be fair, the other white books, we've seen the rise of white book everywhere. So I see on the Iron Throne and in tournaments, Lanny white book is very popular, and then Bara white book is being played now by some people. So it's becoming strong. But none are going crazy like Tyrell is. So I think Tyrell needs a bit of a hit, and then the others will be fine. And if they're all too strong, I mean, we know the reason. Basically, the reason is the white sword plot is just crazy, right? It's crazy value. Puts Baristan or whoever into play for free with high initiative as well, and it puts them into play from the discard pile. So even if they get hit a little bit, lose their hand or whatever, lose their board, they just put a strong character in twice per game. So that's basically what's fueling the white book, not any specific character, basically.
Yeah.
Then we have Vulture King. Doesn't give the king attachment to anyone, but yeah. So one,
I've heard that a few times, and I've had to explain why it shouldn't. it's not that sort of card.
Yeah, so basically this one is a little bit weird on first glance. So we talked about this a lot, whether Tyrell should have this weird pillage mechanic. So basically, it's that just affects timing a little bit. But what it is it's icon control, right? After you win a challenge, basically, except that actually it's not a reaction to pillage. It's just a reaction to winning the challenge. So pillage.
Yeah.
What does pillage do here?
So the design of this card is essentially self pillage and opponent pillage. So it's encompassing the idea of the Vulture King, where there were multiple Vulture Kings in the past who retook that name to just basically wreak havoc on both sides. There are theories behind, whether the Martells were actually funding the Vulture King, but that's all theories. So the fact that it's hurting yourself, as they hurt Martell lands back in the past, and hurting opponents with the pillage, to give yourself a slight benefit is where it's, destruction on both sides for a reward for your side, if that makes sense. And that's why it's applying pillage. It's a very easy way of doing the destruction on the opponent's side, and then discarding the top card of your deck as the cost of your reward. Just double pillage, I guess.
Yeah, so pillage is an optional keyword, of course, if you don't want it. So you don't need to pillage the tracking decks or anyone that might be interacting, I guess, Targ mercenaries with the discard pile specifically. Whereas the top card of your deck, so you can't set it up super easily in Martell. But if you do it blindly, Martell is one of the factions that can benefit. So they have cards like Houseden Escort that likes to be in the discard pile, and they're one of the best flea bottom factions potentially, right? So they have a bunch of characters that can benefit from being put into play in the challenges phase.
Yeah. And those flea bottom decks as well can usually work with icon removal quite well. So that's definitely an option. There is also the slight one of we saw this recently of Edric Dane, like Shadows Edric Dane, where he just chucks that card into Shadows nice and easily. I've actually been testing this card out quite a lot, and the other day I got it was battering with Banner of the Dragon, and I discarded my Sunday from the top of my deck to put it into play. so I'm finding some niche uses for this, and if I'm entirely honest, the card is becoming a little bit more useful than I expected it to be. But it doesn't feel like, when you compare it to the other one cost, negative icon removal cards that Martell also have, it's sort of like you're doing a little bit more to just get the choice of removing the icon on anyone. So it feels like the balance is still there. It's not as easy. It's not as easy to do as the icon removal ones, but it, in turn, is more flexible.
Yeah, I mean, you can hit characters that can't take the attachments, or characters that enter play later that you could lock in marshalling. And this plan basically going first, I mean, this triggers on defense, I guess, in theory, but going first with cards like Sword of the Morning we've seen in Martell quite often. It's super annoying when they can get it to work, and this is just another piece, right? Win a challenge and basically one less character to for the opponent to work with in that challenges phase.
Yeah, this was one of the cards that the card slot for Vulture King was, we want it to work with aggressive icon control, which is something we've been pushing for past few years a little bit, rather than just control icon control. So this one, it encourages him to do challenges, whether it be attack or defense, to get that reward, rather than just that character loses an icon. It's a bit more interactive.
Yeah, plus Sandstone, which I mentioned here. I'm yet to see Sandstone doing something, but...
Me too. But this Vulture King, it does technically at least work with Sandstone, which is nice. Because of the timing of everything. You can just remove that icon to then trigger Sandstone. Maybe it gives you an extra power, but it's a very small interaction, but it's at least there.
Yeah, and if you don't want it, of course, you trigger it on... Because if you want it to work with Sandstone, basically you have to trigger it on characters that have already defended and they're kind of out for that phase, which is why Sandstone doesn't quite work. But if the opponent walks into that, they don't walk into Sandstone that much, you can gain some power that way, and if they don't, you just you use it on something else and you're fine. I guess that's why it's good that it's a choice, basically.
All right. Shall we get to the next house?
Let's see what we
let's
get.
spin the wheel. Oh, we're going... Oh, right on the edge. We're going neutral.
Excellent. Okay, so this time there's no agenda, but there are some interesting cards. So we have a character, Belligerent Heir, which is a Frey card. Haven't had one of these for a while, I think. Basically what it does is puts gold on characters. So there is a Frey character, I think is it the Lordling? Let me just check.
It's Frey Lordling.
Yeah, which can Oh no, this is the other one. Is it Frey Bastard?
Frey Bastard and Black Walder are the two Frey characters that have Bestow.
Right, so this one, after you win a challenge, you need to discard gold to gain power, basically, and this works out in the same window, basically, in the same challenge. After you initiate it, you can put gold on a character, which you can then spend if it's Frey Bastard. You also can, Black Walder can get bigger, or just I mean, you can do other non-Frey stuff. You can always put gold on Begging Brothers. However, you don't want to lose, right? That's a no-no for this one.
Yeah, this card here, I'm actually very, very happy with how this turned out, based on the different interactions that you can do. The timing of it is quite unique as well. It makes the I don't know if you remember the House Frey plot that we released, the late Lord Frey, back in Hear My Words. The timing of that plot versus Belligerent Heir matches up really well. So you can get Belligerent Heir into play from your hand or discard pile with late Lord Frey, and then trigger its reaction for initiating the challenge to put gold on itself, put gold on, Frey Bastard, Black Walder, or, as you said, Begging Brother or something else along those lines. But with the base case of you can put it on Belligerent Heir, and it will still give him +1 strength for each gold it has. I'm really, really happy with how that turned out. I know I've been playing it a bit, mostly in casual games with friends, but just getting a 4-cost character in with that plot and then having it provide value immediately is great. I think the gamble aspect of the card, where it's you're banking on the fact that you're going to win, is very Frey. You want to be on the winning side. So if you do lose the challenge, you do lose the character. That's the risk. And I have had that happen to me once or twice before, and it's been devastating. So be careful with it. But yeah, from a design perspective, this one, I'm really, really happy with how this one turned out.
Yeah, kind of like choosing the spear in Martell, basically, where you is that the one I'm thinking of, where you need to lose a character if you don't win that challenge, right? It raises the claim, but you're basically doing it when you think I'm winning this challenge. You're not doing it if it's in the balance, and here as well. Yeah. And it has the lore trait, of course, like the other one, but you can't. It's not one of those where you put them in the deck to get an easy heir to the Iron Throne. It's 4 costs, so it is a bit of an investment still.
Yeah.
Okay. By the way, I played against a Frey deck in Online Worlds that played this plot, the late Lord Frey. Basically, with stuff in the discard pile that could have put like a 15 gold worth of characters into play that round if things had gone a bit better, but I was able to just kneel everything, so it basically fizzled. But I was impressed to see that being played, and it won some games as well. I think it finished 3-3 in the end after a good start, unfortunately. But glad to see people trying that, and new Frey cards should help. I mean, it's been years, and Frey decks. There has not been one Frey deck that has been a top deck for any period in the game's history, basically. So
it feels like that a lot of the Frey cards from FFG, apart from maybe like 2 of them or maybe 3 of them, excluding Lord of the Crossing, I know it's House Frey, but it's technically like good for anyone. A lot of the House Frey themed cards, there's only like 2 or 3 that are maybe even playable, and the rest are just fodder at the moment. I really hope that we can start supporting that theme a little bit better, with Belligerent Heir being one of those. I know that we got 3 cards in Hear My Words, being Jingle Bell, We Stand Together, and the late Lord Frey, and then nothing since then. So I'm hoping we can support the theme a little bit more, and the reason why I'm so happy with Belligerent Heir is I feel like it does that for quite a few cards. Not all of them, of course, but it does. It's doing quite a bit. With the late Lord Frey, I've always said that plot will become good once there's more non-unique House Frey characters that are worth the cost. This here is a 4-cost non-unique House Frey character. So, It's starting. It's starting, but it's not still not there. I don't think.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Then we have the Red Fork. So this is, I think, the first one. So the
Yes.
Green Fork has since also come out, but this is the first one. That
Yep.
supports the Trident location. So last pack before the cycle, I mean the Spoils of War, the Trident was considered as a huge danger throughout the playtesting for that one, and then was nerfed just enough so that basically it came out ahead of its time before it got the support of these locations that come in and out and
Mm.
always are there to be sacrificed. And no one has really tried it. I mean, I've seen one very creative deck just playing Trident with the Maester Aemon in Night's Watch, the one that applies claim and some of that support and one or two other cards for that. So that was fun. But actually trying to keep the Trident for yourself to have a permanent claim race, I think we were all waiting for these locations, and
Mm.
yeah, it's still not entirely clear. So people that play aggressive decks will be able to get a better picture. Are you putting all of the forks into the deck and just going crazy on all the challenges, or are you picking the one that you plan to be winning by 5 always? Uh,
Yeah.
in this case, it would be military, right? And yeah, winning military by 5 is a good plan sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the sort of card where it's on its own. It's sort of an average card. Um, in some military decks, having +2 initiative is actually super, super useful. I know with like anything intimidate related or whatnot. Um, but this is very clearly just like the other two forks that will be coming out. It's very clearly been designed with the Trident in mind. I know that it's going to be a very tough thing to have to invest in all these, the Trident and eventually the three forks or two forks, however many you want to put in, to make the Trident work. But in my mind, that's sort of the point. If you invest more in the Trident, you're going to get more out of it. And having each one boosting a different plot stat in a different way, I feel like it should provide that. But even if it doesn't, it's something we can very easily support in the future. So the Trident, as you said, it was an undershot card by intention, and it's one that, because we would rather be careful with something that's raising claim permanently, it's one that we're slowly going to be adding cards to support it, just to creep up to where that line is of where it becomes like a strong card without it being busted, and then just leave it there. So I don't believe these three forks will put it to that point, but it's definitely making it more playable if you invest in it.
Yeah, so basically, for anyone who is struggling to follow, what happens is, so the Trident, when you win a challenge, basically any challenge as the attacking player, you're supposed to sacrifice a neutral location. And if you have the red fork and you win the challenge by 5, you can sacrifice it, and then it immediately comes back in the same reaction window. And
Mm.
if it's in the discard pile, okay, you have to sack something else, like a rose road or something, and then it can come back. So it's a little less convenient, but also it's a way
Well,
to get it back.
well, no. If it's in the discard pile, you can just use it as. Oh no, because it's a forced reaction. No, sorry, never mind. Yeah,
Yeah, force come
try it.
is first, but then it comes back for the
That's right.
next one, and you can get the loop going basically.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
If you're winning by
Anyway,
5, I mean, Trident is it's getting rid of all of your locations if you're doing all kinds of challenges, right? So
yeah.
it's tricky, but when it works, it will be tough to deal with, I guess, as all
Yeah.
of these aggro cards
I,
can be.
I do. The only other deck that I think that these cards could work in is a Targ deck that focuses on you know, card discard. I know I have seen the Red Fork in one or two Dothraki decks, where you're going to be winning military by 5 anyway, and so you're using Red Fork as a discard, and then just putting it into play right after you win a challenge. Uh, that's. I feel like that's a pretty good play because then +2 initiative in a Dothraki deck is great.
Yeah, and for the others, I
So
think the one that has the gold modifier also, right? So if that goes
Green
away,
Fork,
for
yeah.
instance, with political disaster, it's there in the discard pile. So first time you win a challenge, by 5. I don't know what is it intrigue for that one.
Yeah,
it can
intrigue by
just come
5.
back. Yeah.
It's the color of the fork, Mia.
Right. Okay. That should be easier to remember. Yeah.
Yeah. One additional thing about the red fork, I will just say, it was surprisingly hard to find a red river for the artwork. It was surprisingly hard to find one that depicted a red. It's like a red muddy river that it's described as. A bit easier for the green and the blue forks. But,
Yeah, it looks nice though.
yeah, looks like a blood river. I love it.
Ooh, and then we have grayscale.
Yes.
Okay, so this one has a lot of text. It's a little bit complicated. You need to go step by step to understand exactly how it works. So basically, let's go through it now. So you put it on a character, and then in dominance, it's optional, by the way. So if you don't want to trigger it, because the penalty is the opponent can get a card. Well, the owner of the character that you're putting it on can get a card, right? Or what's to choose an opponent? Okay. So you can put it on one character, choose a different opponent. I mean, it's complicated. If you have multiple opponents, your head might explode. But basically, you put it on a character, reveal a card from an opponent's hand, and then if it's equal or higher, you can kill the character. If it's not, it's they draw a card. So basically, the smallest the character is, the lower the cost is, the more likely it is for you to hit with this. So it's in
But
a
then,
way
yeah,
it could be like a child removal, but yeah.
But yeah, you kill the character, but importantly as well, you attach grayscale to a different character. So it's sort of like it's spreading to other characters if the attached one dies. Keeping in mind that it can also spread to your side of the board if they don't have any characters that can take it. So it can maybe end up worse for you, but I mean, you just don't trigger the action.
Yeah,
If it
it's
gets
completely
more characters.
optional.
Yeah.
Non-unique, so you can put 3 of them into play. I've only tried it as it says here in the FAQ with Sweet Robin because it reveals the card, and I try to use it as a bit of a meal card, but that's a side effect basically. So you have the potential to clear the charts or the potential to get almost like a targeted removal. I mean, you can. It's not down to luck completely, right? You can manipulate the hand. I mean, there's cards that do that. You can have Ghost of High Heart and stuff like Sin in Flames to make sure you leave potentially high cost characters in hand or something like that, and then you could get something bigger. But it's risky and it's complicated, and it's always on the verge of on that thin line basically of I wasn't sure going into Online Worlds whether it would be everywhere or nowhere basically. So far we're closer to nowhere, but I don't think people are just willing to put 3 of them in their deck and see what happens. So far I haven't either.
Yeah,
Can't bring myself to do that, but maybe it will eventually. I mean, people will learn that maybe it is worth it after all.
It's similar to Saka King's Landing. It's like it's a roulette card, really. So I can see it not being worth it in competitive decks, but I do think the card is at least fun, which was the point when I think was the point from the start. It's a fun, potentially deadly card to have in your deck.
Yeah, so you can see Reinhardt here on the art as the Meister guy. There is an alternative version of this art with Reinhardt as the guy with grayscale and another Meister basically operating on him. It was offered by Melee as a prize at Online Worlds for whoever got the most kills with grayscale, but it was rather short notice and then no one tried. I think that might still transfer over to a future event, so if anyone wants those, they are available and can be potentially earned, so that could be fun.
Maybe it's a good 8 regions one.
Yeah, could be. And let's see the last one. Okay, city blockade. So this has been talked about a lot. So we have at the gates now firmly back, and actually no more recourse to having banned again. It's kind of found its place alongside the maiden and some other options. And I mean, this is a counter for it basically. So blocks limited for a round, and it's a city plot, which means can be used as an opener instead of at the gates, and that gives you a city plot in the used pile and doesn't have that condition that it only works if there is one already there. So it does work as an opener. And siege trade, which has some relevance nowadays as well with Trident.
Yeah, so this card here from the start, we had two objectives with this. We wanted to have a new available city, like starting plot, because currently it's only at the gates, which we all know has been a bit problematic over the years for being too efficient. And at the same time, we also wanted it to counter at the gates. So its intention was as an opener, and it's possible to even just counter the other opener that we see quite frequently. And I think we ended up with something that does exactly that. I think the only thing that actually changed with this card during playtesting was it was originally 6 income and now it's 5. Maybe some other stats may have changed, but I don't remember that. But I feel like it's hit the mark. I have done it myself, and I've also seen it block quite a few at the gates. Just to clarify with the rulings here, it prevents limited cards from being marshaled, played, or put into play, which means if someone opens at the gates and in the very likely scenario they don't have a city plot card in their used pile, then it completely blocks that at the gates trigger, because putting the card into play is not optional. So you try to find the card, put it into play, but this prevents you from putting that limited card into play. So it's a very hard counter to those scenarios. And we were hoping we could release this to lower the consistency of at the gates, whilst also supporting city plots in a fairer way, or at least city plot line in a fairer way, rather than just always opening at the gates. I really hope it's done this, but I guess time will tell if that sticks.
Yeah, and lately it's been a good time for choke decks as well, but this one is a bit okay. It doesn't go in Greyjoy Winter simply because you need winter reserves in that. It just can't be done. But in the Night's Watch one, it could fit as an opener.
Yeah.
It blocks. I mean, okay, hitting at the gates is great. Even hitting just anything, right, to stop the opponent getting that Rose Road, right? That's +1 for the rest of the game, and you're trying to choke them. So anything that you choke away helps. Or just imagine, I mean, Tyrell didn't set up the Arbor, and now they're going to play Bounty, but no, they're not, right? And then they have a weak round or something like that. It's decent.
Well, Well, that's the thing with this card is we knew that with our intention of blocking at the gates, we knew that it still wouldn't be playable if it can't affect a regular game, a game without at the gates. But this still provides that, luckily, with the as you say, just blocking and marshalling all the few playable limited cards, pretty good. So it has the added benefit of blocking out the gates, but it's still pretty relevant. And I have also seen it in some choke decks, as you mentioned, like Night's Watch.
Yeah, you have to, of course, be careful with it from your side, so you're not putting a Rose Road into play. But it is possible to play around it, right? In deck building, you can focus on non-limited economy as much as you can. There is some available, of course. What was I going to say? I've seen some decks lately, like for instance the Lannister Shadow deck that's played out of Reigns that China played in the World Cup. It just plays econ plots and then in the late game goes crazy if everything comes out of shadows, and they just use the early game to build up stuff. Those decks or Reinhardt's Targ Brotherhood, for instance, they always play that at the gates into Gates of the Moon, accept the weak start, and then they're set for whatever they're going to do. But if you block that really is a setback for those decks. That Gates of the Moon missing, and then they have to all kind of do the mini game in the opening where they're afraid to open with it into city blockade if they suspect it, and then they delay it for a round. And interesting.
I mean, this plot. I did play one of my favorite bad cards alongside this plot, the God's Eye, being a non-limited economy location. So it's still not going to make God's Eye playable, but I did it just so I could get some cards in. I played City Blockade.
Yeah, I mean, there's another agenda that we still have in this cycle that hasn't been released is the one that allows you to go crazy with all the different factions. And I mean, imagine Bravos with that. So Bravos is non-limited econ. Even now in Conclave decks can get 4 gold easily some rounds, so that's not blocked at all.
Yeah.
Okay. Shall we go with the next faction? So 5 left, if I count correctly.
Yep. And the next one is Stark.
Okay. Stark has actually 2 quite impactful cards in this one. More than the previous one for sure, or more than the one we checked, the True Telling. Yeah, now they have something that can impact the board. So Galbert Glower is kind of a Stark version of Ralph Kenning, slightly worse in theory because it's not always going to be turned on. So Winter you can manipulate, so any kind of Stark Winter plotline, which is popular recently, probably more than it's been throughout the game's history. You can play your Winter plots, then if Summer blocks you, this ability doesn't work, so it's worse than Ralph in that way. It can be stronger if you specifically play against an ambush deck, which I have played a deck with ambush against this guy and it was annoying, but even just in marshalling I played against this guy and Famine being revealed, and then such a struggle to put anything into play. Reasonable cost as well, but yeah, he's not going to just fit in a regular Stark with renowned bodies as a 5-cost character. I mean, they have that established good stuff deck that it's so difficult to break into that to that deck as a new card, and this one doesn't quite. So it's a bit more specific, I guess, in going a bit more choky, a bit more aggro.
Yeah. This is one of the cards where it's very clearly intended for a certain type of deck. I think a lot of people are a bit sick of seeing just good stuff Stark from the past. So we're trying to push into different directions that don't have support. This being one of them. I do agree that it's a slightly worse Ralph Kenning probably, just because it's not a guaranteed reduction. You're probably getting a reduction though of one character being marshaled, but it does also have the potential to technically reduce more if they're also ambushing a card. But it's a very tight window. The fact that it's a Lord doesn't really provide too much, but we're hoping this is one that in the future can grow a little bit more than other cards with a little bit more support. And plus, as you said, that there is also more winter support for House Stark than there is for Greyjoy. But that's the easiest card to compare it to, though. Looking at it just from the scope of Galbert Glover and ignoring that Ralph Kenning exists, I feel like it's a pretty well-balanced card. It was very annoying in playtesting. There are a lot of people who said it was absolutely busted, a lot of people who said it was useless. So it was very polarizing, I feel. And so we sort of, I feel like we sort of kept it in the middle of those two opinions, hopefully. But I mean, it's been out for a bit and we haven't seen it causing a massive issue, but I also don't think it's everywhere.
No, I have played against it quite a bit, and it's impactful, but it's not. I don't think it's unfair in any way. So
Yeah,
it can choke a little bit, but I mean, Stark isn't going to then hit you with 3 copies of Botley Crew in play and a Night Flyer, getting rid of your recon location. So
yeah,
in that way, they don't do that. They don't deny all the gold, but they have more aggro than Greyjoy does. In their other cards, basically, if they want it. If they want their Ramses and Bolton Flares and Claim Race, they have that available. So that's what hits you if something hits you. Unless they go really crazy, right? Playing with the Winter Agenda and the Famines, or playing like Night's Watch has done, playing just Banner Kraken for the Botley Cruise. I mean, yeah, if you get all of that in play, yeah, that will choke anything, basically.
yeah. And I mean, Stark is pretty good at. It can be a bit better at controlling the character board, and none other with I would say like the next card as well. Ice.
Okay, so this one has been, yeah, a lot of people have been looking forward to it, and even more have been dreading it. And it replaces the other ice. It's the same cost, but kills in a slightly different way. So imagine this in play. You have saves, can't use the saves, for instance, on military claim, because if you claim that character, it's dying anyway, because this eats through it. And if you play Morgulis, or if the opponent plays Morgulis, your duped character basically is gone. The timing does work out, in case you're wondering. So the character that has ice attached doesn't itself need to survive Morgulis in order to kill your guy that's being saved. So yeah, have you played against this? Has it killed a lot of your characters yet?
Unfortunately for me, I haven't. But again, that's more of a testament that I've just been a bit too busy to play a lot of casual games. What about yourself?
I have not specifically played a lot against ice, so I don't know. I mean, Stark. We know that Stark is reluctant to change their 1 or 2 decks that they always play and bring new stuff. But yeah, getting aggro tools, getting choke tools, and with 8 regions coming up, I think we'll see a variety of Stark decks being played, and I think Ice will feature heavily. I mean, it's really strong.
Yeah. Yeah, and in playtesting as well, it was, as you said, it was quite a dreaded card. A lot of people were just scared of it being there. Had a complaint or two saying it's too strong, but I mean, the fact that it's not absolutely everywhere sort of disproves that, I feel. Uh, the thing I like about this card though is, we've tried to put a focus on this in general. It's very simple and straightforward into what it does. And for that, it's one of my favorite simple cards of the cycle, if I'm entirely honest. Even if it doesn't find as much play as it could. I do agree with you that 8 regions might be a good chance for it to find its home. Just difficult to think about where that is.
Mm. Yeah, and 3 cost. I mean, it's costly to just get it into play. You have to. It basically. It's that's the cost of a character like Arya that then pushes challenges through, or an Alicent. But now we have She-Bear coming off the restricted list, so a lot of these 3 costers are coming back. Or coming back. I mean, it's easier to get them into play. We've seen She-Bear triggers to put Grave into play, stuff like that, and yeah, putting Ice into play is an option. And the 3 cost attachments enable, I think, a Kohor deck potentially. We've seen Star Kohor in the past. They have cards like Greywind, for instance, opening, or Greywind opening the challenge with Stealth, or opening the challenge with something like Wolf King that allows the character not to kneel, and then you trade into Nymeria for the Intimidate and stuff like that. And we could see maybe Ice feature in a more attachment heavy deck in Stark. What's the timing situation with Kohor, just out of interest? So claim is applied, character is saved, and then you Kohor. Yeah, so you can't you can't cohort it in after something has been saved, but you can cohort it out after it's been nailed
Triggered,
to
yeah.
kill something. Yeah, so it's still a deterrent
Yeah.
throughout the challenge, basically.
I can definitely see a cohort deck in the future utilizing this card because like when you keep in mind as well that the tapestry that will eventually be released in Mist of Memory, Brand the Breaker, you've now got a few decent cards at that 3 cost range. You got Grey Wind, you'd have Brand the Breaker, you'd have Ice either version really. Uh, Shaggy Dog as well can still do a very similar. They're all doing very similar things when it comes to pushing, pressuring the board. I guess Grey Wind is more along the lines of canceling things, but it's still applying that. The only other card that doesn't really do that is Marriage Pact, I guess, but it's still a good 3 cost card at that level. It sounds like a decent base for cohort. So I'm now kind of interested to see what happens once that tapestry's out as well.
Yeah, and just checking. So the other ice, the corset one, sacrifices. I was just thinking if I think I've seen decks that play different versions of ice. Okay, so in cohort you can trade it depending on what fits better. Not directly. You can't trade ice for ice. You have to get something in between. But Skagos has been a thing for cards that have multiple versions, like Arya. You could Skagos ice for ice as well in some circumstances if it fits better. Yeah, okay. So good cards for Stark. I think Stark possibly one of the winners of this pack. So what do you have next for us, Steven?
Let's spin the wheel of names. Oh, so close, but not so far. Almost Baratheon, but instead it's Greyjoy.
Okay. Well, I have one of the most impactful cards of this pack. So I have finally another version of Tyrell that tries Drowned. This one is 6 cost, so slightly more expensive. Has printed Renown and has basically a similar thing, being able to put a character out of the dead pile into play for triggers, but doesn't have that passive that just allows you constantly to get characters out of your dead pile. So it is a giant opportunity cost to drop the other one, but I have been inspired to play more Drowned God recently with this guy coming out, and I can tell you that some of those interactions, I haven't won all the games, that's the thing, so it still wins, let's say, 60%, so I guess the top players wouldn't consider that good enough to take it into, let's say, Worlds and try to win with it, but I felt a little bit guilty on some interactions, right? When this guy, let's say Acolyte gets killed and this guy brings Acolyte straight back and kills it again, and this happens a few times, and it's just straight 2 power with those triggers, plus you have your, let's say, Drowned Disciple in play at the same time, and it's I think it goes slightly differently. So with the other version, you kind of don't gain that much power for 2 or 3 rounds, and then in 2 rounds you go from whatever you had, let's say, probably not from 0, but from 5 to 15. This one more slightly more steady, I think, steady power gain, but still incredibly quick. And then if you get your Feast for Crows trigger or something else in between, just go so quickly. But the thing I struggle with in Drowned God, on the other hand, is you also concede a lot of power, right? You're basically conceding one challenge type completely. Military, nothing can do there if you play mostly Drowned characters, because the icons are lacking, and then you rush, but the opponent rushes at the same time. That's why basically I've not been winning that much. Yeah, I mean, there was a Drowned God deck, by the way, Steven, at Online Worlds, made the top 4, if I remember correctly, or top 8, played by one of the Chinese players, a new player actually, and it used the old version, the 5 cost version. So Drowned God clearly playable, viable competitively at the moment. But the choice of tile, I think, just the fact that you can choose either means that probably we got this one pretty close to balanced.
Yeah, I think so as well. And you said it earlier when we're looking at a true telling. Um, we very clearly knew that we could bring this one out, and it would be, at the very least, playable because Cast Me Forth would now exist, meaning there's a similar ability to the old tile that you can now utilize. It's still different enough that you can have the old tile and Cast Me Forth in the same deck, and you're still getting value. But it means that this tile can be played, and you can still, you still have another way of getting those cards out of the dead pile. Yeah, this card here was a very we went through a lot of different versions with this internally, and eventually landed on this idea of putting a character in from the dead pile and then killing a character you control as the after cost, if that makes sense. And yeah, I think I agree. It feels like it's landed around about the same as the other tile, with some very specific cards that it becomes a little bit too strong with, like the Acolyte combo to just get double power. It's not like it's breaking the game, but it's very easy to do. All you need is Tile and that Acolyte to die. But I mean, at the same time, you've got a 6-cost bomb in a deck which famously struggles for economy. So, unless if you account for that in a certain way, you're going to struggle. I know you've been testing it a lot though, so you've probably got ways around that at this point. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out.
Yeah, just the fact that I played it and I thought, okay, this is a bit much when I actually won a few games with crazy combos that seemed like they shouldn't happen. But then people taking Drowned God to Worlds saying, play the 5-cost one anyway, so this is not as good as the old one. Makes me think that okay, might not be broken after all. But it's for me it's more fun. I mean the other one is efficient and just straight allows you to marshal from the dead pile. But this one, like it says here, so weird Drowned God Prophet double kills and stuff like that. I mean it allows for some creativity, even if maybe I don't know. I think time might tell a different story. I don't know if this one is worse than the previous one. I think they're quite comparable. But actually, the thing that has pushed Drowned God, like we said at the start, they got Victarion and the plot. I mean, those are key pieces either way, right? Whichever tile you end up using.
Yeah, they're both going to also be there. So I know in the Prince deck, for example, people prefer to use the 5-cost tile just because if you're having if Victarion is your Prince, you're losing the renown on 6-cost tile, which I think is it's nice to see that this tile just doesn't, as you said, it isn't just an auto include, and neither is the 5-cost one. There's some decks where this tile is better. There's some decks where the other tile is better. I know that there was one iteration of this tile which would have made him fit a non-Drowned God deck, but it ended up just being a bit too strong, with the only difference being that he could react to a Drowned God character or an Ironborn character being placed in a dead pile, which, means you can put him into just a regular Greyjoy deck with all your bombs. Got a bit problematic when, a 7-cost character was being killed and then just immediately put into play.
Yeah.
So we ended up cutting that. But yeah, notably though, this tile works with non-uniques. So that's one benefit that you do get from this guy over one of the others.
Works with non-uniques.
Works with
uniques. Yeah.
Apologies, uniques and non-uniques. That's what I meant to say. Sorry. Yeah. So you get a very clear benefit.
Yeah, I mean, so if something is skilled, you can bring it back and it stays in play, basically, right? Yeah. So any kind of targeted removal can get around him in that way, but he does have a limit. So once you've spent him, you've spent him. So can't go crazy. Fanatic kills Acolyte in marshalling, then you do the trigger, and then something happens in challenges as well. It's still limit once per round. So Yeah, the other card we actually will probably talk for a while about as well. So the Drown God Wakes is yeah, it's an incredible effect. So triggering condition is quite tricky. Dominance by 10 or more strength. So okay, Naga's ribs, can get a big number, but without that, 10 strength for dominance, even counting 10 strength yourself, let alone winning by 10 if the opponent also cares about dominance at least a little bit, is tricky. But then the effect is incredibly flashy. So basically, one character from each player is exempt from this effect, but on the others, it's like triggering a Morgulis for 2 cost and no max, but since you do save a character, probably triggering multiple of these in the dominance phase if you have the gold is not going to be that impactful, but it can eat through dupes of everyone except the one that the players are choosing, I guess.
Yeah. This when we started off with this card, we had the name of the Drowned God Wakes, which is a very common Ironborn phrase for the Drowned God is causing. It's when like the seas are unsteady, the seas are raging, and it's the Drowned God waking. We had that idea, and we're like, we need something that reflects that. That's like very impactful, and something about killing, obviously, because that's Drowned God. And so we landed on this. We initially had it where it was very simple. It was just win dominance by 15, kill each character. So win by 15, do a Valamangolas. But it found there was more value. I think it was 3 cost as well. I could be wrong there. Found there was actually more value lowering the bar to use it, but also allowing each player to save someone, which is still a benefit for yourself if you have like 1 copy of Tile on the board, for example. I don't know whether this has been played, but yeah, it's one of those cards where it's like you need the deck to be built around it. But obviously, as you said, it's a very flashy ability. It's a free Valamangulas, and winning dominance by 10 is difficult. But if any deck can do it, it's a Drowned God deck. I mean, technically, you'd also have 2 gold at least in the dominance phase, so that's 2 dominance already. But yeah, it's clearly a very high bar, but then for a very high effect. So yeah.
Yeah, Naga's Ribs, once it gets a few characters in there, I mean, it provides 20 by itself, so it's like almost like 3 Iron Thrones sometimes. Yeah. I don't know, I haven't seen this played to huge effect against me, or I have not included it in my deck. I thought you need to be prepared to play it, so you need to have a clear game plan in mind if you put this into your deck. I just haven't figured that out, but yeah, it's interesting. Even going into Morgulis, if the board is highly duped, is an option, or just playing instead of Morgulis, where basically if you play the Prince version of Drowned God, where you have to store the power on one character, but you still want stuff killed. That character basically is super safe with this because you choose it, and everything else around it dies, and that's okay. But it is risky, of course. Risky playing this, and then if the opponent resets, I mean, it's through your dupes and saves as well. So
yeah,
but very very big ability. It's one of those big abilities like. Maybe it never gets played. I mean, I know I was so scared of in Daznak Speed, for instance, when it came out. I thought as a Baratheon player, this guy to kill me basically. Get everything will stand and get their military against me again and just kill everything. And I don't know, maybe we've seen it played 2 times in 10 years or whatever. How long have we been playing this game? 6 years since the card has come out, maybe 6 or 7. And this could be similar, it never gets played, but you always need to know that it exists, that it could potentially, for 2 cost, just be a crazy board clear. And you can play this in... There's basically no Drowned God restriction, right? I mean, probably just the triggering condition itself is a restriction, but if you imagine the board's net, but you have Victarion and 2 gold, that's already 9. So you could potentially just play it in any deck. but I don't know why. I mean, yeah, it's situational. Sometimes it could win games, but probably it's not going to be used that way.
Yeah, I think it's one where it doesn't have a Drown God specific Drown God requirement, but the Drown God requirement is the win by 10, realistically.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we have 3 left.
Yes, I'm spinning the wheel now, and we have Baratheon.
Okay, so we can we can talk about Sir Andrew Esterman. So it's my favorite card. I was prepared to basically say in this review that Andrew Esterman will not be played in any deck ever, but there was a deck at World's Top 16 and I spectated it, and Andrew was in play, so I stand corrected. So people can put him in the deck. So basically, my problem is the card is all over the place with the traits. So basically, has itself the 7 trait, Knight as well, but the 7 is the impactful one, I guess, and needs a lore character to be killed to use the ability. And those traits, basically, if you go all 7, there is no room for extra relores. If you put relores in, the 7 doesn't matter. And then the cost, the fact that you need, let's say, this guy for 4 cost, another Chad, which could be 2, and then someone that is kind of worth saving, because this is a save effect after all. It's all very costly and doesn't always work out, and I know that when I tried to make it work, even though I was extremely pessimistic, I got I think Robert, the one that gets you extra power, right? This works with his ability, so he gains 1 power and then he triggers to get another one. I had him and Andrew and another Relore Chad, and I had everything duped. And I thought, okay, this might be a good chance to play Morgulis, so I have this save available and have this guy duped, and I'll get out of that really well. And then it was played into the Harris, and now what do you do, right? Because if you keep Robert and Andrew, there's no more lore, and Robert just dies if he's not duped. And if you keep Robert and the lore, he dies as well, because the save is gone. And in the end, you just have to keep Andrew and the Chad, and the Chad saves Andrew, and Andrew himself is not a game-winning body. So basically, I have not had a good time with this guy. However, I mean, at the end of the day, he does potentially gain power. So people have been trying to make him work. I've seen him in games, in casual games, where it clearly wasn't doing much. But the fact that Gabi played him at Online Worlds made the cut there, and thought he's a good deck builder. Put him in, and it's clearly worked for him. I presume 1 copy, but I don't know for sure. So maybe I was too harsh, and it's not completely hopeless. I don't know. What do you think, Steven?
Yeah, you've heard my opinion on this one before, where it's a 4/4 Bicon character with the at least 1 relevant trait, being Knight, but it's not really one that you're going to build a deck around. With a save ability and giving you power. Granted, the save ability needs a Relore card, but that's something that you can easily do in Baratheon. If you look at this card from the perspective of you want to get the 7 value out of the 7 trait, it's going to be a bad card. If you just look at it in the fact that you're going to slot this into a Relore deck, and it's just not a Relore card, it's hard to see it not providing value. And I think we're seeing that with people playing this card. Is it going to immediately provide you value on the board when it hits the board? Apart from being a 4/4 Bicon, no. You're going to need a Relore character, and you're going to need them to be saved. But that scenario can easily line up. There's saving a character on its own is great. Granted, you're killing Relore, but assuming in that deck you're going to have a lot of Chud Relores, I don't know. It's hard to say that this card's going to be useless, and I mean we're seeing that it isn't completely useless when it's a well-statted card providing a type of save that you can pretty easily satisfy if you're not building the 7 deck. I think a very easy trap to fall into is looking at the traits and trying to marry up the 7 and R'hllor, and it just falls apart.
Yeah.
But then, as you said, there's also scenarios where it does fall apart, where someone plays Valor D and you play Valor M, but that's just the game. That'll happen with anything else, right? It's not a fact that Sir Estamon is lacking. It's the fact that Valor D play just outplayed the Valor M play. So yeah, I feel like this card is one where I can see one copy being chucked in decks here and there in Baratheon. I can't see it being everywhere. I can't see it being a deck being built around it. At least not until there's maybe a card that can link up the 7 and R'hllor. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but if it does, then Sir Estamon will be really prevalent there. Outside of that, though, you can't be too upset with a 4/4 Bicon. That's them doing something else.
Yeah, I mean, some people have been saying, okay, he has the 7 trait and Bonifer gives him insight. And that's true, to be fair. I mean, Bonifer's ability is crazy, but he's always been limited by the number of infection, the 7 cards that you can play. And people don't even play Kingsman because it's simply Kingsman also is a nil card, basically works with nil mechanics, and the 7 moves away from that. So even FFG kind of didn't have a clear vision for that. But yeah, I mean, Holy 100, Bonifer himself, Davos potentially, and this guy, and you can get the attachment to have other people get trait. And yeah, mass insight good in that, and it's another body. But the save, yeah, I don't know. I mean, also the saving, if you want to get power with his ability, which is ideal scenario, obviously you need to rely on the opponent also to try to kill your characters off. Sometimes you are up against a deck that just doesn't do that, and also you need to be careful about cancels, so you can't claim a Robert and then have this guy cancelled, because then the save will also fail. So it's a bit tricky, and the cost, yeah, I mean, just Baratheon is not Tyrell, so if you play this guy, I mean, 4, that takes most of your gold for a round just to get him into play. But yeah, at the end of the day, as I said, he does gain power. So, and one thing I can say, in playtesting, I was getting a little desperate trying to somehow get this guy to work. I even put Glamour in one of the decks and tried to have someone killed on purpose so that he could do something maybe. And it turns out that Glamour, okay, it's a bit silly, but when the opponent is completely unaware that Glamour could happen, it actually did something coming out of shadows, and I think it suddenly put a Stannis or something back into play, and the 7 cost one, and it felt good. But yeah, we're getting a bit desperate with that.
Yeah.
So we'll see if I'm wrong on Andrew. So the Laughing Storm, on the other hand, has been one of those again, like Ice and some others we mentioned, that people have been kind of afraid of. Especially, I think people who played the first edition, which I did not, have memories of this. So this was in first edition, I think, on a character, actually, the similar ability.
Yes.
And people have still some trauma from first edition having this ability.
Yeah, so the character in first edition, just for those who don't already know, it was a 3/3 Bicon Knight who had Deadly, which I believe is something along the lines of if you win a challenge with Deadly, I think the opponent had to kill someone. I'm not entirely sure about that. I probably got that wrong. It's been a while. But the passive was, while the Laughing Storm is standing, cards cannot be discarded from your hand. So we had to sort of, because we can't, in second edition, we've sort of made the unstated rule of, not having characters that aren't in a Song of Ice and Fire in here, but we still wanted to, bring in Alec Irwin's card in the form of this tapestry at the very least. So that's what the passive is, and then because it's not a character providing you extra value, we thought the reaction could cover that base at the very least.
Yeah, and seems like it was it was not a very well liked card in first edition for the people who had to play against it. So people are
Yeah.
kind of afraid of this. I think personally it's not that scary. So unlike some other of these attachments, Baratheon does have decks that will have neutral that will have bar allocations, right? So those that go really into control will have cards like Storm's End, like Red Keep, Chamber of the Pentatable, Summer Hall, whatever. They will have some in play to have targets for this. Not all of them. So some more aggressive Bara decks like Brotherhood and Cohort will not. But in control, it's quite easy. But again, you have to pay for this, right? And it's not so easy. But once it's in play, it can be really oppressive, right? If you imagine, so the card that has been brought up often is the 6-cost Cersei, which potentially the opponent is relying on to get rid of 3 of your cards, but it's completely blocked, right? It's not happening, let alone just normal, usual game mechanics like having Intrigue Claim, which is completely blocked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the thing that we all keep in mind, especially we noticed that it's in playtesting, is I think we quoted it as the tapestry tax, where getting this into play is actually, and keeping it in play is actually a lot harder than it seems, just purely based on the 3 cost, the unique location, and then actually meeting the conditions. Keeping in mind though that out of all the tapestries, this one might be one of the easiest ones to satisfy, mostly because the abilities themselves, it doesn't really matter what type of deck that you have. The ability will provide you something. In contrast to something like the Legacy of the Watch, you need to build your deck around that, where you need the right traits and you need to be able to, the scenario to line up where you win those challenges. Laughing Storm is a whole lot simpler. It's just, prevents random discard from your hand, or you can do it the other way where you kneel it to then kneel a character. So we noticed that the rewards needed to be high for these tapestries just because the tax is there. We have definitely noticed it, and they're quite volatile when you actually get them into play. So, yeah, there was a lot of concern, but I think a lot of the concern was also born from people who hadn't tested it and hadn't actually experienced that there are sort of invisible hurdles to get this to actually... In the scenario where you get it into play, that's great, but it's getting to that point that's going to take you a little bit. Yeah. If you're not lucky, of course.
In every one of these, the first FAQ entry here is this same one, which is also a potential answer, universal answer to all of them, right? So Brothers Ropes will blank it, and blanking it causes it to become illegally attached because it loses the location only. It means the game expects it to be on a character and sees that it's illegally attached, and then it's just gone, not gone to hand, but gone from play, and you've spent 3 on it. So if at any point these tapestries go crazy in the game, Brothers Ropes just gets played and takes care of them. So that's
or other cards. There are quite a few surprising. There's quite a few anti-attachment cards that can be played to take rid of this. I know people don't like to go back to these cards, but like Rattleshirt Raiders, for example, is such an easy answer. If you can win them, you just have to really win a military challenge with them attacking, and it counters all the work that someone put in to get that tapestry into play. So it's like that, Brothers Robes. There's also Burning the Books that will eventually be released in Mists of Memory. And of course, Confiscation. There's a lot of answers to make these attachments quite vulnerable. It's just, if someone builds a deck without thinking about these tapestries existing, and then they get hit with the tapestry and complain about it, it's sort of on you. You need to... a good deck builder thinks about what exists and tries to think about how they're going to handle that when it eventually comes up. So unfortunately that's where a lot of complaints come from with all the tapestries, not just Laughing Storm. But we've had ample examples that there's ways to counter it, and they're already available, and there's going to be another one available later in Mr. Memory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so looking forward to using this a bit more. So I put it in my assault deck, but difficult to play multiple copies because it is unique and it is that card potentially. If you draw more than one, but then if you play only one, it's not the pivotal card that you need to have in play, right? So it just it's not always there, and at the moment my experience with it is limited, but I'll be playing it more for sure in the future.
Yeah.
Okay, so two to go. Are we doing Tyrell or Targaryen?
Wheel has been spun. It's looking like Targaryen.
Ah, excellent. So we have Daenerys Targaryen, the fourth version, and this is a champ card designed by Francis for his World's Win, and it's a fun card that I've seen used quite a bit already, and it's a Dothraki Dany, so she can gain power for Blood Riders, which at the moment before her anyway, the Dothraki deck has been able to kill some stuff, and then they have Khal Drogo as the only one that realistically gains power, and they've relied on just getting power claim on 2 claim plots, or just even raising it with the Khalasar and stuff like that. But this is quite a straightforward power gain for unique attacking Blood Riders. So if you can get them all in the same challenge, and if you can get them all into play, there's a limited number of them, but quite a few. I think 5 or 6, right? Unique Blood Riders.
Yeah, something along those lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 currently.
Yeah, and they can go in the same challenge with overwhelming numbers, for instance, being able to fetch them from the discard pile as well. But yeah, I mean, you don't need to go crazy getting 5 power in one challenge. You can just get a few here and there, right? 2 or 3. When she triggers, she herself is not a useless body. She's a 5-string body with a keyword, and she makes Khal Drogo even better.
Yeah, no. This Daenerys was. I really like the design. The only change I believe that we had was she conditionally gained insight previously if you had a companion character, but we decided that 2 things. That was the text box was already quite full, so we couldn't really easily fit that once we got to printing the card. But secondly, as well, it was there's sort of too many conditions happening at the same time. It's like, you have Khal Drogo, he gains Intimidate. You have a companion, she gains Insight. You have a reaction when you have Blood Riders. It was just a lot of things happening. And so we slimmed that down to just be Insight. And from that point on, she's been just a good core to that Dothraki theme. As you said, like currently they've got a lot of aggression, but not as many ways to win the game other than, my opponent has no characters on the board, so I'm just going to win unopposed. It's just been the renown from 1 or 2 characters. Now they have Dany that can actually provide more to that. And, even just as you said, even just the insight alone, that is very valuable in any Targaryen deck, really. So, yeah, really happy with how this one turned out. Really happy with how the artwork turned out as well, with Francis in the background there, looking a bit menacing. Yeah, no, it's pretty good.
Yeah, and not a Stormborn character, just in case anyone thinks they can also do the hatchlings and stuff like that, that specifically refer to the trait rather than Daenerys by title. So basically she goes in this deck, and if anyone can find a way to play her outside of it, yeah, congratulations to them as well. But basically is a different kind of Dany. And yeah, I've seen her played already, and looks very promising actually.
Yeah, if you want a little fun fact about the artwork on this one, me and Francis worked really pretty close with Harry on this one. Apparently, the pile of heads in the background are a bunch of traces of like a bunch of soccer players. So I don't. I'm not a big soccer fan, but that's what Harry said. He just got a bunch of them and sort of drew them as seven heads. So if anyone wants to look at that and try to point out which are which, go right ahead. But that's a random fun fact for you.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's I need to see a bigger image, I guess. But yeah, that
Yeah,
sounds.
maybe look at the tipping images on AGOT cards or something. Yeah,
Okay, and then they have the burn event. So this is actually a very interesting card that I have playtested myself. I played Targ in one of the playtesting events, and I thought it was interesting card to play with. So it's a shadow event. You have to play it through shadows, and then you choose a participating character, and the minus is based on the cards, the number of cards in shadows,
yeah,
which could be. I mean, if you're playing this, it should be some at least, right? But it's
yeah.
not terminal burn, so it will not kill outright.
Yeah, this is a card, at least to me, that I don't think it's as strong as it could be, but at the same time, we always have to be careful with burn cards. I think burn in general, it got away with quite a lot with 5 cost Danny applying its burn to anyone. So I think as long as we keep burn very clear restrictions of participating characters, you know sometimes with attachments is also important. Sorry, without attachments, apologies, is pretty important. This one here, we thought, if someone's spamming a bunch of cards and shadows and then pulls this card out for 1 gold at the time, of course, it costs you more to put into shadows. Having a minus like 5 alongside the dragon pit that you probably already have in play, it's going to be quite a lot. So we made that decision to not make it terminal burn just for that alone. And I think it was the right call. Even if it's a bit under the mark in my mind right now, it has more potential for shadow burn decks, which already kind of exists, but isn't, it isn't the usual best way to do burn.
Yeah, I think the fact that Summerhall now exists means that any card that is not terminal burn has gained in value.
Yeah.
And also the shadows, I mean, uh, some decks, so we've seen burn played out of assault from shadows sometimes. Okay, there is the Dragon Pit interaction, but also the fact that Marine, their location, you kind of do blindly, and then you get 3 cards to work with, and it could not be playable at that particular point. And if you have assault, we've seen that used with Marine, right? Trigger Marine, then
Yeah.
whatever you can play, you do, and something you put into shadows. And yeah, something that has natural shadows, I mean, works perfectly with cards like that. Can always
Definitely.
kind of stick into shadows. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
this one will not be complained about too much, and it has that one thing that we always say, right? Targeting participating characters, because just targeting anything passively and killing it with some kind of combo sucks for the opponent. But this one, you just keep
Yeah.
your characters out of challenges and you're safe from it. But then, of course, Dark still wins because you're not doing anything.
Yeah. We'd like to avoid negative game experiences where we can. So, you know, we're going to keep it to participating at the very least, I think.
And that leaves just Tyrell. So
Yes.
they have an interesting card that I really
Mm.
wanted to play in playtesting, but didn't have the time, and
Uh,
now I have also not found the time, but I will at some point. Villas Tyrell, which
well,
is
don't you worry. I played it a lot in playtesting. I played it a little bit on release, so I can talk about this one quite a bit.
okay. Yeah,
Uh,
looking forward to hearing your experience. For me, the thing that is inviting, of course, is being able to basically Voltron him, and then he he basically contributes to any challenge, and you get the winning alone triggers with high numbers because his strength is impactful. Now, has that worked for you at all or not?
um, it did a lot in playtesting, where I was able to. The way I used it in playtesting was I built a Knights deck that was just attacking and defending alone, of course, which fits very well with Willis. And with cards like High Garden, it's just each character you attack or defend with is just at like an absurd amount of strength, 12 strength even at some points, and all for a 5-cost character that was then also giving me insight when I put him into the challenge himself. It was such good value. I think the idea of this card has so much potential. You're sort of pushed to focus on those attacking or defending alone decks, which are usually knights, and in my mind it's a bit underplayed right now. You see a lot of knights decks like Kingsguard, for example, that utilizes Green Apple Knight that just wants to put as many knights on the board as possible and then just win on renown. This sort of card pushes for the opposite strategy, which is having few knights but having them very, very hard to beat. There's so many options here. I'm also waiting for Blackwater Forces to come out because that, in my mind, is also a very nice addition to one of those that style of deck for different reasons. But I can't remember what the percentage was, but I think the playtesting deck that I played with Willis Tyrell and all those knights, it was at an absurd, it was at like 70 to 80% win rate, if I remember correctly, which was just nuts to me because I'm not a Tyrell player. I'm not good. So, if someone who's a much better player than myself and a much better deck builder than myself actually puts that into a competitive scene, I will not be surprised if it gets, into one of the top spots.
Yeah, so what I imagined with this card, and this is just theory basically, I haven't been able to put it into practice yet, is so if you have someone like Corm Marjorie in play and you have her to boost a character to be able to win a challenge, you can boost Willis instead, and then he's basically 5, and that's +5 on every challenge. And then if you have even if you don't manipulate the challenger's face with something like jousting contest, let's say you attack with a 5 strength character plus Willis's 5, that's already, even by being able to defend with multiple characters, it's difficult to overcome for the opponent, right? And then the triggers from winning alone, okay, Swarm with Mass Renown is great, but Lady Sansa's Rose, for instance, is 3 on a single challenge, so that's quite a power gain.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's like I mentioned it before, as a High Garden as well. It's a similar thing to Marjorie. You marry both of those together. There are a few other effects as well that you can put in that can boost a non-participating character for the whole phase. Any of those effects, slap them onto Willis Tyrell, and you have permanent buff for anyone participating alone in the challenge. It's nuts. So I can see that deck being cracked eventually. That's the thing. And because of that, I'm sort of glad that we've kept Willis at like a 5 for 2, because it's very undesirable stats, but at the same time, his strength contribution is all about that strength. So it sort of makes sense. It's bound to be good in my mind, and it's just a matter of when.
Yeah, it's true. Venom's Blade can just get him, so that sucks if that happens. But
he's a good milk target as well, of course.
Yeah, and like I said here at the bottom, so Grand Melee, he can potentially get around that, right? Because he contributes to your side without participating, so his side will never. I mean, that strength will never be removed just by having a lone attacker or defender. And actually, that's some of the mechanics I've played with in the past in Baratheon, even in Tyrell, and with the Erin stuff, right? With what's the lady that does this? Anya Wainwood. Which is fun for me. It seems counterintuitive that plots like Jousting Contest and Grand Melee, which have basically the opposite abilities, right? One needs a single character, or can only allows a single character, and the other needs multiple characters to even do the challenge properly. It seems counterintuitive that they would go in the same deck, but kind of they do, right? If you can manipulate it with someone like Willis, he gets around both of those in the same way, basically, or characters like Anya, and I think there's potential for that in Tyrell, and also, of course, they have the removal from challenges, so those plots that require those specific things work with that quite nicely.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to seeing more of him, and once Blackwater Forces come out, I'm going to put together my playtesting deck. I'm going to put it out into the real world and start playing it a bit more. But I want to get all the combos that I enjoyed. Yeah.
And finally, we have the Warden of the South, which is another one of these. So this is kind of a set now, right? The Warden attachments, they have some similar pattern. So this one gives the commander trait as well. Goes on Tyrell Lord. So the Lanny one, kind of struggling for useful targets, because there are some lords, limited number kind of, that are played, and then they all, some of them have renown anyway and clashes a bit with the ability. This one has also a lot of targets, more than the Lanny one, more realistic targets, I think, more Tyrell lords that are going to be played regularly. Commander trait, situationally useful in Trident, which in Tyrell is underrated, and then the ability here is stand ability, kind of a Randall Tarley one, and it's actually the first card that properly works with Qohor as well. I know we struggled with Qohor last year when we played the 8 regions for Tyrell, and just tried to make something work, and just seems like such a dead agenda. But this one, the moment it comes into play, can already be triggered, and then of course it can be triggered with all the stuff that Tyrell does anyway, right?
No. This is, as you said, it's continuing our line of the Warden of the X attachments, and notably as well. Obviously, works with a lot of Tyrell abilities, but it notably works with the plot of that similar name, Warden of the South, which is giving them, gaining strength when someone participates as an attacker or defender. So that, have this on them, trigger that, they stand. I can see this card being playable in so many Tyrell decks. I don't know if it necessarily will be, but it's just a Randall Tarley on a 2-cost attachment that's also giving an extra strength and commander trait. Commander trait is a bit gimmicky, it'll only be useful in a Battle of the Trident deck, I think. But even then, you've got a lot of strength pump effects that can work in that Trident deck quite easily. So, I think this was a pretty well designed card, and it should be playable in quite a few decks. I don't know whether it actually is though. Whether it actually will be. Sorry.
Yeah, I think probably will. I mean, Lightbringer is a 2-cost attachment that kind of does a similar thing and is very playable in decks that play the big renown. If you can imagine something like, so Seal of the Hand is a 3-cost guaranteed stand. This one is cheaper, not guaranteed, but the prospect of not being able to increase attached character strength every round. I mean, just an Arbor Marketplace already does that. So it's super easy, I think.
Yeah.
And that's it. Have we missed anything? I don't think so.
No, we got them all.
Yeah. So that leaves our
predictions.
Yeah, our predictions and our choices basically for favorite card. It's not going to be Andrew, so I have to look past Baratheon in this one a little bit. Yeah, okay, let's have a moment to consider.
So I think I know what my favorite character is. I literally just talked about it. Willis Tyrell, I would probably say is, sorry, not favorite card in the pack. Willis Tyrell, just because I'm really looking forward to the combos you can use with him in a deck type that just isn't really played or supported competitively. I really hope that it's a card that can prove that deck can be played. And plus, I just really enjoyed it in playtesting alongside a few other cards. Yeah, that's probably it for me with favorites. I mean, I like Vulture King as well, just because anything that gives icon removal is a plus for me. Been a bit undersupported for a long time, but it's probably my second favorite, I would say, out of the pack.
Yeah, I almost would pick Willis myself. I think probably second place at this point. So yeah, we talked about him a lot. So I'm really excited to try him. But it's been 2 months now, and I haven't found the time. And now, if I don't get drafted by Tyrell in 8 regions, which seems highly likely, uh, I will probably have to give him a miss for another couple of months because I'll be focusing on a particular faction. So sad, but eventually I'll get to him. But I would pick probably Tarle the Thrice Drowned for this one because he has inspired me to just try something new. I just had to. I mean, it was such a flashy little ability. With as soon as I realized, okay, you can do weird double drowned prophets and stuff like that, I knew I had to try it and I had to see if I can get Drowned God to basically to get results. And I had some fun. Dropped it for Worlds because it didn't quite seem strong enough, but might continue now with that. So I think that's been a huge success, and I look
Maybe
forward to playing more.
maybe we'll see you show up to Starlick in a Drown God deck. Itching
Uh,
Baratheon.
yeah, so the rest of the Greyjoy cards, those that are still unreleased, I don't think there's any more support, right?
For Drown God? I don't believe so, no.
Yeah, so let's see if we can break Drowned God by then.
Yeah.
Probably not me, but some people might. So we'll see. Yeah, problematic cards. I mean, honestly, it could be Tal again.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Drowned God could be problematic as archetype basically in the coming months, but I don't know what the cause will be. Is it going to be Victorian? Is it going to be Driftwood Cudgel? Or is it going to be this guy? Since people are playing the old one still, maybe not.
I think that's what actually makes this tile puts him in check. Really, the fact that the other one is so pivotal. It's so necessary for so many Drown God decks that it is actually a tough choice. You know what I mean? It's not just this tile is gonna I can break the game with this tile. I can do really well with this tile, but the other one is also doing really well for me in
Yeah,
most scenarios.
yeah, exactly. So I think maybe it's not going to be him. Maybe it's Ice after all. I mean, Ice could be annoying. Daenerys could be annoying at some point. Maybe these two are
Yeah.
candidates. What do you think? Anything stands out?
For me, I want to say tile as well, but that for the sake of argument, I'll put that as my second preference. I actually think, or as much as I love the design, I think belligerent air, something is going to break with that card eventually. There's going to be like I know it's got the sacrifice mechanic there, which I'm glad is in there because it's clearly a way to counter it. Um, but just placing gold onto a neutral character, in my mind, it's always ringing danger bells, I guess. So I wouldn't be surprised in the future if there is a deck that utilizes belligerent air in such a way that makes it's got to be a bestow deck, of course, but just makes things so hard to deal with. Um, I think that's going to be my vote. That and Tal.
Interesting call.
Yeah.
So we had problems, honestly, with Castle Rock recently, since it can just basically keep those seized and whatever filled up forever, and can just go crazy with Braun getting some strength. And Free Company's agenda does this as well. This is a four cost body that has a limit once per round, so I think probably will be fine. But yeah, I mean, putting gold on characters that are not supposed to keep getting it, or get it beyond their
Yeah. Yeah.
natural bestow value is a strong mechanic and potentially could be problematic. Yeah, so I see the logic there.
I more mean like belligerent air, possibly even used alongside the existing good cards. I don't just mean belligerent air on its own, but nothing else. I mean it'll be probably part of the next next bestow deck that has problems. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. So okay. So if I have to commit, then I say probably as strong as ice is. I mean, it's just another aggro tool. But Daenerys potentially, if she proves to be gaining too much power, that seems like more realistic scenario. So maybe Daenerys will be above curve at some point. I don't know. But honestly, doesn't seem that dangerous this pack compared to something like Castamere. I think we'll be mostly fine, probably. I mean, some people would say Laughing Storm, but I think that's probably not going to be that strong.
Other people would say Sarah's card as well. It's weird. We're in a weird scenario where a lot of these cards are like they're sort of like they feel pretty well balanced, but then there's decks that they're chucked in that are already strong. That it's like, this card works really well in that deck, or you know, this is making another deck competitively viable. Does that make this card too strong? I don't think so. But you know, it's all an opinion game, really, at this point.
Yeah. So overall, probably Stark has had the best pack here, just by having two cards that we talk about as potentially really strong. I think for the others, mainly been either one or they've been pretty well balanced, not that threatening to be broken in any way. But maybe I'll give this one to Stark. Lenny, a slightly quieter one this time after getting some really strong cards previously in the cycle.
I'm more inclined to say that I actually think just for Danny alone, I think Targaryen actually, in my mind, got one of the best cards in this pack. Just because I feel like she makes Dothraki competitively. It already was competitively viable, but now competitively viable in a different way. I don't know. It seems like a really easy choice for me as to how she's been helping that deck, whilst the others are a little bit harder to judge.
Yeah, the track is going up and down a bit. So Peter Shook played the Traki deck at Starek last year, made top 8, and then that deck was really popular since, basically. In the World Cup, it was the most popular choice for Targaryen. It was, or was it the Conclave? I don't know, between those two. I think the Prince that was promised was the most popular choice, and it was basically a disaster, losing almost every game. So, but that was pre-Danny, so it's just made it stronger. Okay, and that's this pack, Fire Upon the Grass. And the next one we don't have to wonder because it's already out. Now this is super recent, 10,000 chips. I won't display it here because we'll have the review of that coming up. We probably won't take 2 months. We'll try to get to it as soon as possible. But that's the next one to look forward to, number 4 in the cycle, and 2 more to come by the end of the year, right, Steven?
Yeah, two more on the way.
So let's conclude then with, as usual, with some invitations. We have new tournaments coming up, so anyone that has not registered for 8 regions, you should. The highlight of the calendar for me, along with Stalek maybe, team event where you are drafted into a faction and then you have to play a bunch of underplayed agendas and make creative decks. I will put a link to the registration form for that in the description. And Champions of Westeros, next one, the Summer Edition 2024 also. The previous one has just ended earlier today, and the next one is open, and hope to see you in that as well. So those are the immediate events coming up, along with, as usual, of course, keep an eye on single events, the friendly open events, stuff like that will be announced on Discord. So, thank you, Steven, once again for joining me for this one. So that's, I think, about 7 or 8 we've done now together, and let's continue the tradition.
Yeah, let's keep it going. Enjoy it.
And thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye.